So the way BigQuery does what it does is built on top of Google's typical, very scalable architecture, right? So we have these grids of storage and we have these grids of compute. BigQuery is built across them. We have this petabit network on the back end that kind of runs through all Google's data centers. And so as your data scales, we just pull in more blocks of storage and more blocks of compute that get thrown at the workload. We can do that totally on demand. I think the work we did with Ed Plus for years was all on demand instance. So, as the data grew, the instance just grew. Or we can do reserved where it just, you say, I want, 1,000 GPU or 1,000 CPUs and a petabyte of storage, and that's always there and it's scaled out for you already. Man, what a terrible slide. So, really the big thing these days is when you're doing AI against your data. And I mentioned you can now bring AI to the data versus bringing data to the AI. This actually applies across clouds, across platforms. Like we can federate different data sources from different locations and run BigQuery machine learning against it. Again, BQML is awesome because you don't have to be a data scientist. And I'll show you a little bit about what I mean by that when we get into the demo. But being able to ask BigQuery, help me build a model that analyzes propensity to enroll using this table and the data contained in it. And it will give you kind of hints, or not hints, it'll give you code. Typically, you have to refine the code a little bit, but it'll spit out code that says, here's how you build that. Once that's packaged up, you can say, all right, now run it against my data set and output its output to this new propensity to enroll model. And this is what Ed Plus has been doing for kind of a long time now. So, people come navigate your website. Google Analytics captures a bunch of data from how they navigate around the website. They might ask for more information. So they do an RFI. They fill out something, and that goes into a data set. There's enrichment of that data that happens. And then the model runs and says, who of all these people that came and navigated around is most likely to enroll? That information gets fed back into the recruiters the next morning. So they have a list, top 10 people to call today versus the old model of just, who's on our list. Let's start calling. You have no idea if it's good, bad, indifferent, right? But with all the information that we capture from the way they navigate, and again, all that data centralizing in BigQuery and the model running in BigQuery, that night it runs every morning. They have new access to it. And so this whole workflow that exists around building machine learning, around managing machine learning, around data integration with machine learning, it's not an easy task to do. ML ops is like literally an entire discipline now. We've built it all in so that you don't have to go outside of anything. Yeah.
Is the website visitor anonymous?
So by Google standards, 100% yes. We will never share with you who that visitor is, even if we have a way of identifying them by browser ID and all that. You capture browser ID. You use a third-party product that actually uses that browser ID and then goes out and makes a very, very educated guess on who that user actually is. So it's not something Google provides. It violates our terms of service. You guys have a different tool that does it. Telium is the tool you guys use for it. And I think you recently switched to Growth Engine, which is another tool, like a CDP definition tool that does the same thing. All right, so that's BigQuery in a nutshell. I know I totally glossed over it, considering everything it does, but I want to talk about Gemini. So Gemini for us is kind of an umbrella term. Gemini is both the model, the Gemini AI model that is our generative AI. It is the AI that exists in Workspace. So like in, the Gmail and stuff you guys use, there's a Gemini for that, a Gemini for Google Docs, a Gemini that works in slides. And, you can tell it things like, make me an image in this slide that matches the content. It'll build an image for you. And then there's Gemini for X, I'll call it, the very top of the stack. Gemini for cloud, Gemini for workspace, Gemini for BigQuery. And so when you look at this entire stack, you get the power of a Gemini model, the AI model, the generative model, and then you've got to integrate it into a bunch of other Google tools. All right. So is that clear? I know. I just want to make sure I'm doing it justice here. So Gemini Pro at its core, this model that underpins everything is a multimodal by nature model, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can approach building AI models. Uh, I think most common way of doing things is like a collection of worker models, if you will. And so if you've got an image to process, AI says this is an image, hand it off to the image processing AI model. If it's text, if it's video, if it's audio, those go to different models. In Gemini, it's one model, so it understands multimodality. So think of a PDF that includes charts and graphs and text, right? We can look at the charts and graphs and understand from the document they're in the context of what that chart means in relation to the text that's around it, right? And so having an inherently by nature multimodal model enables a lot of things. Like we can look at this and describe this video as it's a wave crashing and blah, blah. But if that video was embedded in a website, we can analyze what is the website saying in relation to what this video is showing, things like that. So it brings a lot of power to the model itself. So this is what this Gemini 1.5 is our current version. There's a pro model, a flash model, there's like faster, smaller, more expensive, less expensive. There's a lot of permutation to what you can apply. And then of course, there's still all the traditional non-Gemini models. So I think I have this conversation a lot. We're doing something with you all that is text to speech. And everyone's inclination now these days, especially with the Chat GPT just bursting on the scene with OpenAI, like OpenAI, if you look at it, they have a generative model. So everyone tends to think, how would a generative model handle this task? But if you're doing speech to text, that's really expensive for a Gemini or a generative model to do. Why would you not use a traditional speech to text model to do that, which costs pennies on the dollar compared to bigger models? So Gemini is great for this multimodal. It's great for generative AI, but it's not the end all be all. And so I'd encourage anyone who's looking at machine learning, building models, try to balance what's what. That being said, of course, the focus of my talk is Gemini, so we'll stick to that. All right, so let's talk about Gemini and BigQuery itself. So BigQuery, hugely scalable, tons of data, but that also means like a giant haystack in which to search for needles, right? The bigger the data set, the more intense and more rigorous you have to be as a data scientist looking at the data. And so what we try to bring to the table with Gemini is the ability for the AI to assist you in looking at things. And I will show you actually how this manifests during the demo, like what it means. But you can now ask questions of your data directly. So rather than having to know, how do I write this query? How do I build this ML model? You can say, based on this table, what is the answer to this question I have about the data that's contained in the table, right? And I will show you actually what that looks like. And I'll even short circuit some of that by showing you Gemini can actually look at your data and tell you what kinds of questions your data can answer for you, and then show you the query that it takes to do it. And so I'm prepping it just in case the demo fails miserably. You guys will know what I was trying to show you. It also works from the ingestion side. So like, how do I clean this data to make it more structurally sound to import into my database and get that built into data form to actually build the pipelines for you to clean it up. The same thing with like joining tables. You can drag two tables into data canvas. I'm not going to show you this because I'm terrible at data canvas, but two tables side by side and say, join these tables. And it actually analyzes the tables and figures out what are the most likely columns to join on, make recommendations, and then shows you the query statement to build to do that join between the tables. And so you can drop everything on data canvas. Think of it like a total workflow, just a drag and drop designer for your data and your databases, and then ask AI, like, figure out how to connect all this stuff and make me a query that actually does something with it. So it's pretty powerful stuff there. All right. So again, build pipelines, discover what your data can tell you, design your queries for you, and then ultimately automate operations. So like I want to schedule this machine language model or machine learning model to run against my data every night at midnight and create a new table of today's most likely to enroll students, and then generate a report from that that gets emailed out using our Looker product, gets emailed out to everyone at 2 a.m. Right. So rather than having to know how to do all that, you can now ask for it. So the cool thing is, because we're talking about generative AI, and by the way, let me just start. I know everyone sees that first bullet and says, oh my gosh, learns and understands my business because it's looking at my data. This is all secured in your environment, dedicated to you. We'd never, like, our privacy policy, myself as an engineer at Google, I can't even go in and see what's in your environment unless you grant me access and all that, but like anyone else. And when I go in, if you grant me access, it's all auditable, complete transparency in my access to your environment if you gave it to me. Um, so everything that we learn and know and do in your project is specific to your project. You can share it within your organization very easily. You can't share it. And your policies at ASU will not allow you to share it outside the organization without special exception. So all of your data is used only for your models, your training, your environment. We don't take anything you do and train our models based on your data. So our model doesn't get smarter because of the work you do. Your model gets smarter. You basically start with a frozen in time version of Gemini and fork from there if you do any retraining. Uh, I don't know if anyone's used a home, Google Home, the little assistants or the Nest homes now. One thing Google's always been really good at is understanding what the heck are you actually trying to say? Like, what are you asking me? Sometimes it'll tell you it doesn't know, but we've spent a lot of years understanding the intent of what you're asking. And so that's something that we've brought forward into these tools. So when you ask it something, you don't have to have the best language to ask it in. You don't have to be super knowledgeable in the way you ask something. Gemini is able to understand what you're trying to get at and then help steer you down the right path. And of course, you can always say, thumbs down, that was totally not what I meant, and it will learn from that. Again, in your environment, it learns. So it looks at what you're doing, makes suggestions, can help out. Think, code completion, things like that. So coming soon in SQL query generation is code completion. So it'll look and say, oh, you mean this table? Oh, you're looking for that record. Oh, you want to do these things. And it'll actually, like, I'm definitely not a DBA, and I can sit and fiddle my way through building queries now and joining things and visualizing. It's actually pretty empowering. And then again, adding automation to how your operations work. All right, so let's talk quickly about visualizing. I don't know where I'm at on time. Let's see. Uh, all right, so I think I have 20 minutes left. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so I think you guys use Looker Studio a lot. It was Data Studio in the past, Looker Studio now. I know it's used for a lot of things, a bunch of dashboards built on it. Looker Studio is the free version. It's pretty powerful, like especially against BigQuery, Sheets, things like that, to visualize data. Looker Studio Pro, think of it as kind of the enterprise version of that, where you can easily share access to creation and management of those visualizations very easily. You can schedule visualizations to run. Um, it supports SLA. So like if something's wrong with it, you have a phone number you can call. It's not just a free product. And I think it's cheap, like $9 a month per user, and it's licensed, per active user. So if you have a team of people using it, 5 people, you're like less than $50 a month to have enterprise level features. From there, we actually move up to our Looker product, the full-fledged Looker platform product. And that adds some really cool things. And I'll show you, like Explore Assistant, I'll show you today, being able to talk to your data with natural language and visualize, in natural language. Um, summarization of data sets. So I think ASU Prep Digital did a cool one. They built a chat bot in Slack that they could say like, tell me how many students are enrolled, and it would actually go out to BigQuery and like figure out enrollment, or what's the most common last name in the fifth grade. You know, they could like just ask it cool questions like that, and it would figure out the query, send it to BigQuery, get back an answer. So you know, that kind of roll up data, really easy to do now. Taking actions on data, and so some of this I will show you. Some I uh, won't have time to get into, but if you stop by the table, you know, we can always walk through stuff and see if we can make things work. Um, so the uh, uh, the big thing with the way we've done this is really trying to integrate generative AI totally from end to end, right? So from the point where you're getting your data or even generating your data through, say, student-facing chatbot, something like that, and collecting the information that they're asking about, doing sentiment analysis, natural language processing on the things they're saying or doing. So from the very beginning of interaction all the way through to automating the analysis and distribution of data, we've taken the entire stack and added generative AI to it. All right. So enough just talking, right? Oh gosh, I gotta hold this and demo, man. All right, you gotta be super clumsy. Let's see. See if I can drag this thing to no. Ah. All right, I got to kick out of presenter mode. And all right. So this is BigQuery. BigQuery's interface, pretty simplistic, right? I mean, uh, literally anything in my project kind of shows up. Anything in the BigQuery project shows up here. And I can have multiple data sets and tables and all that. And if we go down, I actually just, so we have public data sets available. To do all the cool analytics on them and stuff, you can't leave them in their public location. You have to import them in. So I made quick copies of a couple data sets. Let's see. Boop. All right. So this data set is about births across the country. I think it came from Census or NIH, one of the two. Anyways, a lot of public data sets. You can actually just join them in, use them, join them with your own tables without ever having to host them yourself. But if you want to do this cool analytics stuff, it's like, you know, you can see a preview of the data that's in there. Um, I told you it can look and figure out insights from your data. So I ran this. It actually takes a few minutes to run when it's looking through the data. This is one of the things you have to have a copy of the data to be able to do. But if you look, and I know it's probably a little hard to read. Let's see if I can. So again, Gemini can look at the data and then say, here's some examples of questions that you can ask against your data, right? So this was again birth. So like, what's the age of mothers who gave birth? Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's really cool. And then my favorite part, being the non-DBA that I am, is I click it open and here's the query to actually answer that question for me. So I can, you know, just copy it, paste it in. I don't know. Divya was giving me a hard time because I said I wasn't going to do this. But, where's my tab? It's really hard to do it this way. That was not the one. All right, get out of here. All right, so first things first. Let's paste that thing. You can see up here, we get a little estimate that says it's going to look through 44K of data. So BigQuery on demand charges by terabyte that you analyze. So like this query literally costs less than you can probably calculate. If we run it, it goes off and does its thing. Yeah, no data to display. I can't even see it. All right. Well, Divya, this is why I said I wasn't going to do this live. Did I not select the right thing? No, I did. All right. Well, smoke and mirrors. Pretend that this gave you something really cool. All right. So let's just get rid of that. Bye. I don't know why that didn't give me anything. All right. So some of the other things we can do, like generate SQL, like help me find the total. This is really hard to do holding a microphone. Help me find total number of records. All right, that's pretty easy query anyway. You can see Gemini will actually just go tell you, all right, here's how you do that. Right. So again, non-DBA, it's gonna tell me the queries I need, and then I can just say insert that into uh wherever it is. Man. Yeah, somewhere down there, there's an insert button to go send that query over to my query window and run it. So again, pretty straightforward way of talking to the system, pretty straightforward way of talking to your data. And then I actually will show you one more way of talking to data. If I can, it's got to be on this tab. Oh, there we go. Explore Assistant. All right, so I've got a few queries that, so this was, again, another data set that was available, and it was just about patients in an orthodontics office. And so you can see the questions that I asked, like what's the most common procedure we perform? Um, show a list of the top 10 most common procedures. And it actually, builds me this graph out here automatically. I didn't have to figure out how do I go write that query or how do I build a visualization. I'm just like, show it to me in natural language. And the answer is right here in graph in front of me because it's Looker, we can explore the data itself. We can actually see the data set and we can zoom in. Like, we only ask for the top 10, but we can change like the number of records. We can zoom in, explore, we can literally navigate through our data graphically, explore different areas. This is a tool that I had not much appreciation for until we started it internally at Google to do our sales reporting. So I could see like how much money am I going to make and which ones you all did something that made me some money. So I really learned how to use the tool pretty quickly when I could start figuring that out. Going in actually with ASU is funny. I'd go in a lot and have to figure out like, all right, what projects are now burning what? And you did some pretty big projects that we weren't expecting. And so someone would come to me and say, hey, wait a minute, something's going on here. And I'd spend a lot of time diving down into, all right, who's burning more than they were supposed to burn. Uh, so it's really a friendly tool to use. But again, we're switching interaction from being a data scientist, from being knowledgeable in writing SQL into speaking in my own language. Beauty of it is when I say my own language, it's 140 languages. If I ask Gemini a question in Spanish, it answers me in Spanish, right? And so think of it as kind of a great equalizer in terms of what you can do, how you can do it, um, without having to spend months and months learning the tech and the tools and all those pieces, right? Again, everything kind of lives within the BigQuery interface. Our queries do actually work, contrary to what I showed you there, like the insight. Um, and that's kind of what I got. Questions? Yeah.
Situation that everything lives in the BigQuery dashboard. How do we familiarize ourselves? I use ChatGPT to take a screenshot of my code. I upload it and ask it, I interrogate it. Do you have a similar tool that can take screenshots and ask it about the dashboard?
Yes. So Gemini, yes, can even the public Gemini can do that. But you really in the dashboard itself, like you can just ask it for help with functions and things you're trying to do. So like, here's my yeah, discard this. Like this is just general Gemini help and all of the things that it can do, right, within BigQuery. So code completion, generation, explaining SQL, explaining code. Same thing exists. Like I use Gemini code in the console itself. So like we're in the main console. This happens to be, within BigQuery, but we could go into, well, here, I'll show. So within every console, we have Cloud Shell. So this is like a terminal that opens directly to your cloud project. And within this, we actually have a full code editor that's based on Visual Studio Code. It's still provisioning. I haven't used it on this. From in here, I can ask for code help, tell it using this service or that service, or which services do you recommend doing this in cloud? And it will actually build me everything I need in terms of, well, maybe I haven't used it at all in this one. Oh, there's my Gemini one. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Bye. If you do this every day, oh, look at that. Okay. Well, I'm not going to log it in front of y'all, but do this every day. It doesn't take, literally not been in my cloud shell in this environment more than a month. Free terminal, use it every 90 days. It just lives forever.
The thing is, I was using this actually last night too, and even when you click on the top right corner with the little asterisk star that for Gemini, last time I checked, it doesn't let you upload screenshots. So I've had a difficulty familiarizing myself with dashboard because there's almost feature overload. There's too many places to click on. I was hoping that there's some kind of AI that I could interrogate and walk me through the dashboard and train.
Oh, well, so if first thing you want, if you want training, it's built in, right? Tutorials are built in over here. And it's context aware tutorials. So if you're like in BigQuery, the tutorials are going to be BigQuery, they'll walk place. Second thing is you guys have an enterprise subscription to Cloud Skills Boost. Used to be Quick Labs. So Cloud Skills Boost is basically think unlimited training for free for all these tools. But in terms of upload a picture to it and all that, that's the consumer product, not Gemini itself. Yeah, I guess you do need to know a little bit about, what you're looking at and where you're going in there. So from that standpoint, Skills Boost is probably the best way to get the initial skill or running through one of the tutorials. All right. Other question? Yeah. All right. I'm gonna stop.
I'll ask another question. So I'm actually glad that we had that problem you were trying to show us in the live presentation. How would one go about overcoming that obstacle in real life?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that my environment represents real life very well because it's not our production code. It's like my environment is all internal Google, like pre-release stuff. Um, but if that happened in real life, cloud support, like you guys have a support contract, you can absolutely call and get support on it. Um, I've never seen it actually happen before. Like I do this at home in my own personal account on my Google Cloud environment, and everything works the way you'd expect it to. Um, but yeah, cloud support can help. Like if you're seeing a erroneous result like that, like I mean, it literally returned nothing, right? It gave me the query and then returned no result. That shouldn't happen. Um, Cloud support can help with that. And I'm sure if I, spend 2 minutes actually looking, not up on a giant screen over my neck, I'd probably see exactly what the problem was right off the bat. Um, and I probably just, try refreshing everything, honestly. Which I know is not the greatest answer. Like support's not always the best avenue, but support, they'll, if you really get stuck, support will be there to help. All right. Anyone? No? Yeah.
Question, I think you mentioned something about running the query and costing in terms of like it's charged by terabytes.
Yeah.
So, is there like a precaution measure so that like we do use it and for some reason we end up like using a massive amount of data, for example, to like kind of control that?
Yeah. So on a per project basis, you can set a budget. I will tell you that we don't shut down a project for going over budget. You'll get warnings as you start to approach, but like, here's our theory. Y'all a bunch of researchers out there doing research. And let's say you're 3 minutes away from finishing your thesis research and now you're going to go $1 over. You would literally call and kill us if we shut down your research right at the very end, right? Because you're going to be $1 over budget. So we made a conscious decision, like we're not going to shut down a project, but we'll send you an alert at 50% of budget consumption, 75% of budget consumption, 90%. And you can set those thresholds to custom if you need it and adjust what the budget amount is. So, that's the main way I would say. We also control things by quota. So like if you're worried that you might go over, you can set a quota on it that will like keep you under what your budgeted amount is. Or if you need to increase your quota to do bigger jobs, you can do that as well. So
There's also Vertex AI or Gemini and Vertex AI, and I think that also kind of charged by like a profit how much
per token. Yeah. Yeah.
and is that like the same logic as the
Yeah. So so it doesn't show you an estimate of what it's going to be. BigQuery is the only tool we have. I know that, actually, that's not true. If you're going to provision a VM, it will give you an estimate of what it costs per month to have that VM. But as far as the like on demand, per terabyte, per token, per that, BigQuery is the only thing I've seen that gives you that. But the same thing does apply in terms of um, quota and budget applies to everything in the project, all project resources. So it would be governed by the same thing. Yeah. And yeah, the token thing's actually an interesting question. I mean, now that we have 2 million token input windows, like, 2 mega tokens is a lot of tokens, and you can pretty quickly start to run up a bill if you're, ingest War and Peace and then ask it a bunch of questions about War and Peace. Like, yeah, it can get to be pretty expensive. All right, look, she said I got 10 minutes left up here. So I can dance, I can sing, or, we can keep doing Q&A, or I can let y'all have 10 extra minutes back. Yeah.
So a couple of days ago, I was kind of looking at a comparison of the different AI services out there, and it noted kind of an asterisk for a unique feature with Google that could help with like reducing costs. Something about like having like cached content.
Mhm.
So if an organization users are using similar queries, you can refer to the cache without actually burning code.
Yeah.
Do you know about that? Can you explain more about that?
So
Apply to Gemini BigQuery.
That's a good question. I don't know that it applies with BigQuery. It and maybe Divya knows, but it definitely applies like anything where you're interacting with Gemini through Vertex AI. So whether it's API or Data Studio or AI Studio, like it will apply there, and cache similar questions that result in the same answers will pull from cache. I think they're paid at like 1/10 or charged 1/10 the price of generating the tokens from scratch. So that it's big help. Divya, do you know if it applies in the BigQuery?
Maybe it takes 4 seconds for the result to come back. The next time you run it, it's not going to be, it is cash, but I don't know about the price point.
Okay, so by the way, Divya back there, like I said, I used to be your primary CE for almost 5 years. It's her now. So all your questions, or you want to beat someone up, like why didn't that demo work? Ask her.
They go into it and it didn't work.
Yeah, but we can get an answer for that. If you want to stop by the table, happy to look up and see what info I can find on it. Stop by either late this afternoon or tomorrow.